my technical fail than the forest, actually. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Hello, everybody out there in UK Climb Book Land. I'm just about to interview Will Dean about his latest book, Black River. If you could tell us a bit more about the plot, please. Well,
Absolutely, Alex. It's great to see you, man. I'm really sorry I'm late, everyone. But it's good to be here. It's good to see you. Yeah,
yeah.
Black River is the third Tuva Moodyson book. So this is the cover, and it's set over midsummer. So the first two, Dark Pines and Red Snow, were set in the kind of the coldest, darkest part of the year. They're kind of typical Nordic noir atmosphere. And Black River set over midsummer, so it has that kind of fever dream quality where it doesn't really get dark. You have that midnight sun, which is really weird. We have it right now at the moment. If I go out at midnight or just before midnight, the sky is still, it's kind of grey blue, but it's kind of weird because you don't see very much. Like my boy is 6 and he wakes up 3 o'clock in the morning, and the sun is coming through his window. It's just very strange. So this mystery, this missing persons investigation, set in these creepy little Twin Peaks type towns in Sweden, is set during that strange time of the year where everybody's feasting and celebrating the solstice and partying and not sleeping.
What made you do the switch between times of year?
I don't know. I think it was, I wanted to challenge myself. That's part of it. It's quite easy to find a chilling, scary atmosphere when there's a lot of snow around and it's -30 and it's inherently dangerous in the woods because, if you trip over in the woods in my forest when it's -30 and you haven't got your phone on you, you don't last very long. Hypothermia sets in quickly. So that's kind of easier. Whereas in the summer, I wanted to see if I could make a book which was creepy and atmospheric and unnerving when it's 25 degrees positive instead of negative.
Yeah.
So I had to bring out all of the insects and the bugs and the weird characters and the lack of sleep and the fact that in this strange little town of Gavrik that I've invented, people don't really, like, there's a lot of secrets, a lot of gossip, a lot of grudges, and people don't really help out when an outsider goes missing like they do when a local person goes missing.
Yeah. What made you decide to invent somewhere instead of making somewhere that was already in Sweden?
That's a good question. I guess I kind of wanted to play God in a way. I wanted to invent something out of my own imagination, which is for me like the biggest pleasure of writing, is being really creative. So I wanted to, and I moved around a lot as a kid in the Midlands. Like you're in the Midlands.
Yeah, I'm from the Midlands. Yeah.
So that's where I'm from, and for the first 18 years of my life, I was all East Midlands, different villages, different market towns, and I want to draw upon that when I'm creating Gavrik. So I try and take
Yeah.
the creepiest bits out of all those towns and all those villages, and it also means that readers can't say, you can't email me or write me a letter and saying, you got that shop in the wrong place, because it's all in my head. So
Yeah. What made
can
you?
I can
Yeah.
I introduce Bernie quickly
Yeah. Go for it. Yeah.
while he's being well behaved? So he's down here.
Absolutely. He's just as famous as you.
Oh, he's much more famous. Yeah, he's as you can see, he's very relaxed, and he's a good boy. He's a good dog. Sorry for that.
No problem. He's a lovely dog. I was going to ask about him anyway. Yeah.
I'll, I'll bring him on again later.
So what's it like working with him and making sure he doesn't get in the way of your writing, kind of thing?
I think the good thing about Bernie is he sleeps about 20 hours a day. So he's as long as I
Yeah.
a few good walks and let him run around in the forest, he's very happy just sleeping down under my desk. As long as he gets 3 massive meals a day, he's a bit like me really. He's quite content with that.
I've seen him right from a pup. So how long have you had him?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's strange looking at him now. He's about 80 kilos, but I got him when he was this big, last August. So he just turned 1 this week actually,
Wow.
and yeah, the growth rate is amazing. It's like, I don't know. I guess I was expecting it. I've met his dad, and his dad's massive, but he's yeah, it's quite something seeing an animal grow that quickly.
Have you got any plans to use a character like him in later books?
No, because I think there's no darkness about Bernie. There's nothing sinister about this guy at all. You know, he's very straightforward. He's just a good companion. He would take all the tension out of any story, to be
Yeah,
honest. So no, I mean, I think I might introduce a wolf or a bear, but definitely not a Saint Bernard.
yeah. I thought you might have him as a rescue dog, like all the Saint Bernards. Then the thing with the Saint Bernards are used for rescuing people, aren't they?
That's actually a really good idea. I hadn't thought of that angle. I might borrow that from you in a future book.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Um, Speaking of characters and things, um, in all your books, you've used characters again and again. Why did you decide to do that?
I think that's partly, Alex, because I'm such a big fan of Stephen King, and I
Okay.
was when I was growing up, and I love that feeling of reading all of Stephen King's work and getting familiar with Castle Rock and getting familiar with the surroundings in Maine. And those, throughout his books, even though a lot of them are standalones, there's those connections, aren't there?
Yeah.
You know, there's certain landmark places, or he mentions Shawshank Prison in a couple of different books, apart from the main story, and I just love that because it adds another level of reality to the whole thing. And if I'm going to write 22 Moodysson novels or 32 Vermudison novels, I mean, who knows if I will, but I kind of want to, then the readers and me as the writer of them as well, I build up this reality, this virtual reality in my head of these people and these places. And it becomes more and more vivid to me every time I write a new book. So I've just written the first draft of Tuva number 5,
Yeah.
and I'm working like the copy edits of Tuva number 4. And even now, I know Gavrik better than I did back then. I know Lena a little bit better now, Tuva's editor, than I
Yeah.
did back then. I know Tord a lot better, the police constable, because I didn't know him really. In book 1, I was kind of taking the piss out of Tord a little bit. He wasn't very good. He wasn't very effective as a police officer. But
Yeah.
by book 5, Tord and Tuva have their own kind of friendship going on, and I
Yeah.
like that. I like developing that, and that's what I enjoy about series like the Rebus series or Ellie Griffith series. I like getting to know those characters gradually, like you do with real people in the real world.
Yeah. What made you take her back to Gavrik after you'd taken her out at the end of book 2?
I kind of always knew I was going to go back.
Yeah.
I wanted her to leave, and I wanted her to come back. And this is something I'm probably going to play with in future books: is have some stories set outside of Gavrik in different parts of Sweden, and
Yeah.
maybe even outside Sweden eventually. And then, but I think there's always going to be that kind of gravitational pull of Gavrik for her, because she doesn't have any family as such anymore. But she has Tammy, she has Lena, she has this network. And Tuva, she's kind of a complicated person. She's dealing with a lot of issues, dealing with a lot of stuff. So I like the fact that she can go further afield. She might go up to the north of Sweden, to the mountains. She might go and work on a story, work on a case in Stockholm, but she's always going to come back to the people that she trusts.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about doing anything with her in the UK, seeing as she did learn about to be a journalist in the UK?
That's right. Yeah, I have thought about it. I don't know if I'm quite ready for that, to be honest, but Lionsgate, who have the TV rights and the movie rights, I
Yeah.
think they're keen for me to do some more stuff connected to London and connected to the UK. So that I know for a fact they would love for her to have a mystery in London or somewhere in the UK. So never say never. I just feel like I need to kind of get to that point where I'm comfortable with her flying over, because the Tuva books are so claustrophobic. They're small town mysteries. They're Fargo. They're Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
So to have her suddenly in London is a very different kind of story. So I have to figure out how I'll do that.
Yeah. Have you written anything that was based in the Midlands before you came up with the tuber idea, or?
Good. That's a good question. That is a good point. Likewise, I don't think I've been ready to do it until now.
Yeah,
And I don't know if you've seen it, but I've got a new book deal in addition to the Tuva books with One World. I'm writing standalone books now for Hodder and for Simon and Schuster in the
yeah,
USA. So that book comes out in January, 7th of January, and it's called The Last Thing to Burn, and that is set in the East Midlands.
yeah,
And that is like, it took me a while to feel like I was ready to write that book with that dialect and that language and that landscape that I'm so familiar with from my childhood. I
yeah,
wasn't ready, but now I feel like I was ready, and I've written the book, and it's even more claustrophobic than the Tuva books, to be honest. It's
yeah,
very, 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 very tight and tense. But yeah, I'll be really curious to hear what you think of it when it comes out.
yeah. Because we do have our own distinct slang, don't we? Yeah,
We do, and I miss it, to be honest, because like my granddad, he died 10 years ago, but he spoke a real strong Lincolnshire dialect where
yeah,
I understand what he was saying, but my friends who weren't from Lincolnshire, they couldn't understand a word he was saying.
yeah,
But I'm very fond of the dialect, and I'm very fond of the language, and my accent's gone all over the place since I lived in London for 15 years, and now I live in Sweden for the last 10 years. But as soon as I go back to the east of England, my accent slips back, especially after a beer.
yeah. What made you choose Sweden as a place to live?
I fell in love with a Swede when I was 18,
Fair enough.
living in London. That's a big part of it. But then again, she was quite happy living in London forever because she's a city person, and I'm a hermit. I like a very quiet, low key life. So I persuaded her. She was keen on maybe moving back to Sweden to Gothenburg or Stockholm, and I said, what about living in the middle of a moose forest with no water and no electricity and no neighbors and no road? How do you feel about that? And she said, well, she said, like, I'll give it a go for 6 months. So we found a plot of land here, a clearing, a boggy clearing, and we
Yeah,
built a wooden house. And we've made it okay, to be honest. It's not that wild anymore. Like it looks really wild, but it's pretty comfortable. The Swedes are good at insulating houses and that kind of thing and digging a well, so it's all right. But living semi off grid in
yeah.
Sweden, uh, it's great. I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm really happy with it.
Are you in one of the crates now?
Am I in what? Sorry.
Are you in one of the outside crates now?
Yeah, I'm in one of the cabins now. This one was the only one that was here. It's two bedrooms. It's two rooms. I'll show you it quickly. There's Bernie again. It's really small. There's the forest.
Yeah,
And there's the kind of original wall. The little hut. The ceilings are about 5'6" or something, and we lived in here when we were building. When I was building the house, we lived in here, and it had no heating and no water, and the toilet was in a hut about 50 meters away in the forest.
is that what made you decide to put that in the new book with all the crates and stuff? Because crates take a big part in the new book. Then,
Maybe,
well,
yeah. I mean, I don't think where I live is quite as creepy as Snake River, and that salvage yard and the shipping crates and the
yeah,
snake breeders house. I hope I don't live anywhere that creepy, but I do like the idea of small isolated communities because, and Agatha Christie did this, and lots of writers do this. If you've got a isolated community with 5 houses, or if you're on on an island off the coast of Ireland or something like that, it's a locked room mystery by definition. You've got a
yeah,
limited cast of characters and a limited pool of suspects, and I enjoy that because I can play off that, and it gets more and more intense, hopefully, as the story goes on.
yeah. Was that what made you decide to bring the licorice factory in book two, so you could expand the nature of the universe, or was there another reason for that?
No, very much so. Yeah, that was again me trying to challenge myself because I think I can with Dark Pines, I knew I could write rural, uh, a creepy rural setting. But yeah, as you say, Red Snow is it's kind of urban. It's set in a small town, and it doesn't do a lot outside of the limits of the town. It's mainly set in this old Gothic licorice factory, and that was definitely part of it. Again, pushing myself a little bit as a writer, but it was also the fact that in my local town here, which is about 45 minutes away, town of 10,000 people, there is a biscuit factory. And when I flew over here on Ryanair to see the real estate agent to try and buy this boggy clearing, and he was so happy we were going to buy it because no Swedes wanted it. We went for a coffee in that little town, 45 minutes away, and it was just before Christmas, and the entire town smelled of gingerbread. It
Wow.
smelled ginger biscuits, and I was really taken aback by that kind of a small town that smells so powerfully of something so kind of evocative. And I thought I've got to use this in a book somehow. So that's why the licorice factory is in the middle of the town.
But why licorice? You could have gone for anything.
I think licorice is quite weird stuff, you know. I don't particularly like it, and salt licorice in Sweden is really strange. I mean, my wife eats it, and it's very salty, and very weird, and it's black, and it's just I don't know. It's a bit exotic, I think, for international readers.
Yeah. The series seemed to take a lot from family dynamics thanks to that book. Is there anything that you could? Is there any reason you went for that?
That's another great question. Yeah, because I'm obsessed with family. I'm obsessed with like the last thing to burn. This new standalone book is all about family. It's about sisterhood, and it's about parent-child relationships. And the same with the Tuva books. The thing that underpins all of the Tuva books is her relationship with her mum, really, and her relationship with her dad. So I don't know. I think it's something we can all relate to. We've all had parents in some way or another, even if it's adopted parents, and we all have that kind of understanding of what it's like to have good relationships with parents and awkward relationships with parents, and we all have all of that at some point. And I just think especially having elderly parents is something I wanted to write about, and likewise elderly characters, you know, like Sissy in Red Snow. I like reading about older characters who have a lot of life left in them.
Yeah. What made you decide to write Tuva the way you did as well? Because that's pretty unique. I've only read one other book like it.
I wish I could say that I spent, you know, weeks with spreadsheets coming up with her CV and all of her character traits and exactly what she looks like. But honestly, I didn't. She kind of came to me like a thunderbolt, fully formed. And I'm a very visual writer, so I kind of see things before I flesh out a story idea. And with Dark Pines, before I even knew about the murders in Dark Pines, I saw this overgrown, overbearing pine forest, this huge pine forest, much bigger than mine. Further north in Värmland, the forests are massive. And then I zoomed in my mind's eye and I saw this gravel track snaking through the pine trees. And I zoomed in, I saw a pickup truck. And then I looked through the window in my mind's eye and I saw this young woman driving, and she had hearing aids.
Yeah.
So she came to me like that. And honestly, if I had tried to come up with her, I probably couldn't have done. I think it was just a stroke of luck that Tuva came to me like that. And then, you know, you never know as a writer if you're going to start writing the voice of a character and it just doesn't work. So Tuva could have been scrapped before it ever got going, but I started writing Dark Pines, and I'd written a terrible book before Dark Pines that never got published, thank goodness, and that's locked in a drawer. But I started writing Dark Pines and her voice flooded out of me. You know, it felt very natural. It felt very like she was a character living in my head. Like it felt very organic,
Yeah.
and she had a certain energy about her. And I kind of felt like, wow, I want to write this character more. And even now, after 5 books, you know, I still don't really understand her. I still haven't figured her out. So I want to keep writing her to figure her out.
When you were researching how to get that right, what did you do?
I spent a lot of time Sorry, that's Bernie snoring down there. I spent a lot of time reading blogs by deaf bloggers. I spent a lot of time watching a lot of YouTube, actually, deaf YouTubers, which was brilliant, because then you're not getting a really polished kind of documentary type thing. You're getting real people just talking about their experience, talking about misconceptions in the deaf community, talking about the specifics of their hearing aids and new technology through their iPhone
Yeah,
to help them and that kind of thing. So I just tried to do justice to Tuva as best I could by doing a massive amount of research, and only 5% of that research makes it into the books, but at least I feel like if I know a lot more than that, it helps me make her authentic. And then I've got a deaf friend who's a blogger, who's my accuracy reader, so she reads the Tuva books before they're published, and she's absolutely brilliant.
what have you used most from that?
So at the beginning, it was really her trying to explain to me, like, for example, how she feels in the dark, how she would feel in the dark in the forest. And her view was that how I wrote Tuva was correct in her feelings about the darkness. But then she would say that if it was her in the forest and it was dark, she would be even more terrified than Tuva was, the way I'd written her, because,
Yeah,
and this is how she explains it to me in such a way that she feels even more deaf in the dark,
yeah,
if that makes sense. Like, she just feels an extra level of her deafness when she's in the dark and she can't see anything, and she's relying then on seeing things when she can't really see a lot. So she was very good on that, on the atmosphere, and now she's great
yeah,
on things, little details that I just never would have known, like the fact that I'd written in a draft that Tuva takes out a hearing aid and changes the battery and puts it back in again, and my accuracy reader was like, well, the best thing to do is take the sticker off the battery of the hearing aid battery, and leave it for a minute in the air before you put it in, because that extends the battery life considerably. So little gems like that I just never would have known, and I'm really grateful to her for helping me out with those.
the little minor characters in the novel. Well, they're not really minor characters because they keep coming back. But what's your favourite one, or who's your favourite one?
Oh man, that's like trying to say who's your favorite child or something like that. I don't know. It varies from book to book. I'm really fond of Lena,
Yeah,
because she's kind of a constant. She's a wise person and she's a mentor to Tuva. And Tuva needs a mentor, I think, in a lot of different ways. And Tuva can trust her so far, at least. So I like her a lot. Tammy's brilliant. I like the fact that Tammy's got just as much attitude as Tuva has. And there's a line right at the end of Red Snow when they kind of say that they're sisters. And in a way they are. And I think a lot of friendships become like that, especially when you lose parents. So Tammy's very important to me. But then even some of the weird characters, the troll carving sisters are important to me in a way as well. Um, I like knowing that they're there on the edge of the stories.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
One
That's
book, in book two, maybe in two for eight, the story's all going to be about them. But right now, they often kind of make a cameo appearance, or they have something important to say. But I like the fact that they're around in that world.
So you think you're going to take one of the side characters and make him into a novel about them? Then you think?
I have no idea. Honestly, I'm very bad at looking forwards very far. I can look forwards about a book. So I know roughly what Tuva's going to do in a book's time, but like right now I'm having ideas for Tuva 6. So for me that's the next book. But Tuva 8, Tuva 10, I have no idea what's going to happen. And I quite like it that way. I don't want to map out her future because I don't really I like surprising. I like surprising myself, and I
Yeah,
want see where she goes. And like you were talking about earlier, maybe she goes off to London for a couple of books. Who knows? I don't want to put any barriers in the way of that yet, so I'm just going to see how it
yeah.
goes.
Have you got a background in journalism yourself? Because people say you write what you know a lot of the time. That's one of the methods.
That's true. No, not at all. No, I have a lot of admiration for good journalists. I really do. I think they do a great job, and I think it's a tough job, especially these days. But no, I did a lot of weird jobs. I worked on a building site, and I worked in a bar, and I did a lot of strange jobs. And then I studied law, and then instead of going on to be a lawyer or something like that, I went selling discount haircut coupons on the streets of London for 2 years,
Wow.
which was not a
That's
good
very
career.
good.
Not a
That's
good,
very
not a
good. Yeah.
So I was out there in all weathers, in the middle of winter with these coupons for half price haircuts, trying to sell them. Yeah, and then I did a lot of other types of jobs, and then I moved here when I was 30, 32, 8 years ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
9 years ago. Yeah,
Your hair looks not very different. How have you managed to do that in lockdown?
I don't know, man. It's getting very long. I don't. It just does what it does. It does what it does. Who knows what it's going to look like in 6 months' time if I don't get out of the forest? But I'm
Yeah.
I'm relaxed. Maybe my wife will have to shave it off or something.
Yeah, I've not left the house in 15 weeks now, so mine's getting a bit wild.
What's your plan to do? You're going to let somebody trim it or not?
I have no idea. It'll just get as long as it gets. I think I might end up doing a ponytail thing in the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. What do you think that you'll do with Tuba now that you've got a new city possibly coming up in book four? Obviously, I don't know anything about book four. I'm just guessing because yeah,
Yeah. No, book four's coming out next year, and this new book, The Last Thing to Burn, is coming out next year. So I don't know if I can. I'd like to write 2 books a year. Honestly, I mean
yeah,
that's the last 2 years, and I like it. I really like it. I like being super busy. There's not a lot to do here in the woods. So I quite like having two story threads going at the same time. And I find that if I write a standalone, that helps me with the Tuva books in terms of craft because they're so different. And
yeah.
likewise, they help me with a standalone. So I think they feed off each other. And I think, yeah, I mean, I think I'll try and write 2 a year.
So what's going off with this standalone in January? Then what's
Well,
can you
it's very,
is it,
very new, man. I mean, the announcement, the press announcement was only a couple of weeks ago, and it all feels very new. But I started writing that book in 2016.
yeah,
So I've been writing that kind of in the pockets of time I had around the Tuva books, on planes and in hotels and all sorts of things. And then, in February, I was in New York for meetings with my new publisher, and it was all very secret. I couldn't really talk about it, which felt quite strange. But yeah, it comes out January the 7th. It's a very intense novel. It's mainly got two characters in it. And it's if you imagine a lot of books are kind of filmic and they're like watching a movie. This book is more like a up close and personal play in a small theater, where it's
yeah.
very visceral. Smell the characters. You're very up close with them, and it's yeah, it's I don't know. It's a very intense book. It's set on a Fenland farm. It's set in the fens in an isolated Fenland farm, completely flat landscape in a tiny farmhouse, and all the action takes place in this farmhouse.
Sounds sounds really interesting. That yeah, I can imagine some like kind of logs and stuff and all sorts of weird things can happen.
Yeah, it's that weird landscape, isn't it? Those kind of flatlands with the mists rolling in off the marshes and the big skies. That's where I was brought up, and it is. I find that quite a creepy landscape as well.
When you decided to switch to summer, was there any kind of films which gave you the that you were coming to, or any other um, books and stuff? Or
But
was it
Black,
yeah,
I haven't seen Midsummer. A lot of people ask me if it's anything to do with Midsummer, the Swedish movie, and I feel quite embarrassed, but I've been interviewed on Swedish radio and stuff about 6 times about the movie Midsummer, and I haven't even seen it. Um, but I think there are some similarities because of that deep folklore tradition in Midsummer of the dancing around the pole and the clothing and the singing and the drinking schnapps and the weird fish and all that stuff. But I think the location of Snake River, these shacks around a big junkyard on the edge of a river, is partly inspired by the junkyard in Making a Murderer, the Netflix series.
Yeah.
Which was a kind of a true crime series, but the book is nothing to do with that story at all. But that junkyard atmosphere, I really felt very attracted to. That idea of you're surrounded by decay. There's a lot of hiding places in a junkyard for a missing person, but also for evidence and for the perpetrators. So I wanted that enormous rural junkyard vibe.
Yeah, because I must admit, I was thinking Robin Williams and Insomnia. I know, yeah.
Interesting. I haven't seen that yet. That's on my list of things I've got to see. I haven't seen that
Yeah.
yet.
It's a definite good idea for a one where the sun doesn't go down. And yeah, definitely a good one.
Yeah, I have to watch. I do find that Midsummer Insomnia quite strange. Like a lot of people say, is it tough in the winter times when it doesn't get light much? And I find that fine because I'm just writing away or I'm reading or whatever. But in the summer, I just find it. You can go a few days without any sleep, and it's very odd.
How have you found that with the writing? Because it must be kind of surreal now that you're writing 2 books and having to write all year round.
I like, as I say, I really like being busy, so I don't have a problem with that. I'm kind of a workaholic. I write 7 days a week. I think in the last 12 months, I haven't had a holiday. I don't really enjoy holidays. I kind of like being a woodsman and just working on my books and then going out and hauling wood and cutting wood and stacking wood. That I'm a simple guy. That's what I like. I like nature
Yeah.
and writing. So, and also I like meeting readers. Like when we had a nice chat in Nottingham last year.
We did, yeah.
That kind of thing I really enjoy. But traveling to go and lie on a beach, I don't really get the attraction of that, to be honest.
I can understand that. I'd only get stuck if it was me on the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also now with this guy here, it makes traveling difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Even if a hotel says they're dog friendly, like they're not Bernie friendly. He's going to need a suite or something that I can't afford. So it's yeah, he's another thing that kind of binds us to the woods.
Your videos I saw one the other day when you were driving through the woods. What's it like maintaining those?
I don't do it very well. I'm a abject failure when it comes to that kind of stuff. I like doing the things that I like doing. So I'm good at all the wood stuff. I love dealing with wood. I love sharpening my axes and stacking wood and burning wood and working with wood. But I'm not very good at. I should be out there filling the holes in my road every week or after it rains. And my neighbors do this very diligently. The Swedes are very good. They get out there with the shovels and the wheelbarrows or a tractor. And I don't really care if I've got holes in the road. I drive an old truck anyway. It's not like it's going to get broken. So I'm not good at maintaining the road. I choose not to do that too much, but I should do it more.
Do you do anything a bit more like your readers and people in Sweden? Do you do any kind of shooting and stuff like in the first book, or do you not do that?
I don't hunt, to be honest. I've got nothing against hunting if it's done ethically, for food. I've got nothing against it, but I just don't fancy shooting a moose. I see them every few weeks or every few months here, and they're beautiful animals. And like, I don't think I'd have a problem shooting a pheasant or something like that to eat, a rabbit. But a moose, it's just a big half-ton beast, And for me, they're very exotic. I wasn't brought up with them, so I want as many moose here as possible. And I will eat moose meat if a friend of mine hunts. I will take a quarter of the moose. I love it, but I don't particularly want to shoot them myself. It probably makes me a hypocrite, but I don't care. I don't want to shoot them.
What made you decide to do that as the plot for um, Dark Pines? Then, yeah,
I think part of that was literally where we live. The fact that if I walk in the woods in October time, the first week of October, when the hunt season starts, this place is empty. There aren't any human beings here all year round, apart from that week. And that week, there are dozens of hunters in the woods. And they've got rifles and they've got their hunt dogs and their walkie-talkies. And it's a strange feeling because there is a kind of a bloodlust. They want to fill their quotas. They want to kill those elk. And they have been waiting for 9 months to go hunting. And that is a strange vibe when those guys, they take it very seriously. And it's going to feed their family through the winter, especially, blue collar families. They go out hunting, they take a moose down. That's a big part of their calories through winter. Has been historically, still is. So there's a strange atmosphere in the forest that time of year. And there's obviously, for us, there's a lot of gunfire going off all over the place, which is quite odd. Like if I take Bernie for a walk in October, I need to wear a bright orange baseball cap, bright orange hat, so I don't get shot.
wow, it must be kind of surreal considering what we had to put up with as kids and stuff. I mean, it's very different from in the Midlands, isn't it?
It is a bit, yeah. I think it's different from the Midlands because there is a bit of a hunting thing in the UK, but it's quite a posh thing, or it's quite a social thing, it's quite expensive and you have fancy guns and all of that stuff. In Sweden, it's totally different. It's the normal people hunting, and they're doing it to fill up their freezers, and I
Yeah.
quite like. Yeah.
What is it like with kids and stuff out there?
Well, we've got a 6-year-old boy, and he's pretty wild at the best of times. But right now, he hasn't been to school now for 4 months, so he's completely feral. He is he is a wild creature, and he's out climbing trees, and he's out in the ditches picking wild strawberries. I think he has quite an idyllic childhood, to be honest, because it's very innocent. He doesn't see cars, he doesn't see adverts, he doesn't see that commercial world much at all,
Yeah.
which I really. But I think as soon as he turns 18, he's going to leave here and move to the biggest city he can find. He's going to move to New York or Tokyo or something.
That's another thing I've noticed, that there's no kids in your books yet.
That's a good point. Wow, you notice everything. It's a good point. Wait for 2 of the 4.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
maybe that's another thing where I didn't feel like I was ready. You know,
yeah,
and also I love the way Stephen King writes child characters. I love the way he writes the child voice. It feels just like a masterclass in writing children, and maybe I'm intimidated by that. And I felt like it took me a while to get to the point where I'm ready to write children. But yeah, 2 of the 4 onwards, there's a little bit more of that.
you don't seem to write many men either from male perspective. Is that coming?
That's coming as well. Yeah, I mean, likewise. Like I think maybe I'm getting closer and closer and closer over time to the stuff which is most emotional and visceral for me as a person.
Yeah.
So I've had some ideas of books that I want to write in future, but I still don't quite feel kind of emotionally ready to write those books. Maybe I will in 5 years or 10 years,
Yeah.
but I don't want to rush that process. I'm still learning a lot. I'm still learning a lot from other authors and from my own writing. So I don't want to rush it. I think, I've hopefully got a lot of books in me, and those books will come. And hopefully the books will get more and more intense as that happens.
Is there anybody besides Stephen King that you say you've learnt most from?
Yeah, tons of authors. He was a big guy when I was a teenager. Roald Dahl was my big influence pre 10 years old. I liked the darkness of his books. Then
Yeah.
it was Sue Townsend with the Adrian Mole books. I loved them. I was obsessed with them. Then it was Stephen King. Then it was Train Spotting. and Frankenstein, things like that. And then as an adult, Cormac McCarthy is my favorite author, and I am absolutely in awe of his writing. The Road is my favorite novel of all time. No Country for Old Men I absolutely love. I reread those two every couple of years. I love the economy of his writing style. I love the intensity of his writing. Like the way he writes Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men, just such a brilliant villain, such a terrifying villain, so calculated and calm. That coin toss scene in the gas station with Anton Chigurh is just
wow, yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
so good, so good. So when I read that kind of thing, and especially when I reread it, I realize, how far I've got to go, how far I still need to learn, and I'm comfortable with that. If I don't write my best book until I'm 70, that's fine. It takes as long as it takes.
Is there anything that you could learn from rural America? Because because there's a lot of similarities rurally that you could use probably in the Tudor series, I would have thought.
Yeah, well, I think that world definitely influences the Tuva books for sure. I am very interested in the culture and the community in the Appalachian Mountains, for example. And I research that a lot, and I read around that in terms of non-fiction a lot, just for my own kind of interest. The same with the Ozarks, the Ozark Lake, and that
Yeah,
area, 100 years ago. I'm absolutely fascinated by that. Same with the kind of the James Lee Burke situation down in New Orleans. I love reading that stuff. And in non-fiction world, I love reading stories set in Montana. And yeah, I'm very influenced by rural America for sure.
so what kind of non-fiction do you read then? Do you read a lot of non-fiction?
Well, to be honest, I don't read a lot of non-fiction in comparison to the amount of fiction, but I read the non-fiction that I do read often has a big impact on me. One of my favorites is called Fishing in Utopia, and that is, I can't remember the name of the author. It's a British author who's now a Guardian journalist. It's about 20 years old, I think, maybe even older, and it's set in Sweden, in rural Sweden, and it's his kind of memoir of being 20 years old, 30 years old, in love in Sweden. And the way he writes about the changes in the seasons, for example, is just brilliant. He talks about living in some isolated apartment building, some huge apartment building, just that the Swedish government built out in the middle of nowhere. And that transition from winter to spring, him lying there in bed and nothing going on, nobody being around. It's dark, it's miserable, there's nothing happening, and he's just listening to the ice thawing on the roof and screeching and scraping and melting and sliding off the roof and stuff like that. The way he writes nature is brilliant. So yeah, I like a lot of nature writing. I like Helen MacDonald, H is for Hawk, and Amy Liptrot, The Outrun. I like a lot of nature.
Yeah. Can you see any of the audience questions alongside? If anyone's
I
got,
can't.
like,
Let me. No, I can't. I can't.
so I'll get Asta. I'll get Asta to read one to you, and then we'll
Brilliant.
do it that way. Audience questions alongside if there's any.
Hello.
Would you consider writing a Tammy standalone?
A Tammy standalone. That is an interesting idea. I hadn't thought of it until now. I kind of see her her life being very much intertwined with Tuva's. So I can't really imagine her right now in her own right. But maybe, once the series develops a little bit more and I understand Tammy a little bit more, maybe, yeah, she's definitely a really interesting character. And I would like to know her feelings on her childhood growing up in Sweden for sure. So yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Next one. Do you like licorice? I love the family that lives in a licorice factory.
I don't like licorice at all. I find it quite weird, especially the Swedish licorice. Like I said, it's it's very salty and very, very strong. And the Swedes, my wife included, they sometimes have this drink where they get a shot of vodka and they put this salted licorice hard tablet things in the vodka, and it kind of dissolves in the licorice, and then they drink it like a shot, and it's absolutely disgusting. I mean, anything with vodka is fine, but it's not good.
The next one is from Anna. Will you write a standalone about the creepy sisters?
I like that idea a lot. I've had this question a few times at different festivals over the last few years. There's something about the sisters that kind of intrigues people, and they are amongst the most exciting characters for me to write. I love writing them. I love the voice and the way that they kind of finish each other's sentences, and Alice doesn't say a lot. And some people kind of think she's almost like a modern day witch, Alice, whereas Cornelia is even more dark because she does talk and she has a lot of, I don't know, a lot of authority in the forest. She's very capable in the forest. Maybe a short story or a novella, maybe something like that.
What was your inspiration for them characters?
Same. They just came to me. I don't plan a lot. I'm not very good at planning. I saw an interview with Vasim Khan the other day, and he's brilliant. And he was talking about how meticulously he plans all of his scenes and the story arc. And I don't do that. I kind of I visualize the whole story. I kind of daydream it, but I don't plan it out. So when I came to that house in Utgard Forest, I just wanted to know who lived there. And when I kind of started writing that house and I looked into that open kind of workshop, I just saw these two women, one of whom didn't have much hair left because she cut it off for the trolls, and this other woman, and they were kind of they were using hand tools and lathes and working on this pine wood that they had harvested themselves from the forest to make these demonic little expensive dolls. And those dolls are kind of a thing in the Nordics, in Norway and in Sweden, these weird, creepy, expensive trolls.
What's it like trying to learn Swedish? How long did it take you to learn Swedish?
Dude, I'm terrible at it. I'm a complete failure, absolute failure. Number one, I'm not very good at languages, and number two, everyone in Sweden speaks fluent English, so it's hard to learn.
Yeah.
Number three, I don't work in an office. I work in a forest. There's nobody here to talk to. I'm talking to you in English. I talk to my wife in English. I don't see any Swedes, so I don't get any chance to practice Swedish. If I worked in an office or worked in a factory or something, I would speak Swedish. I would make an effort to, but like I don't see any human beings. So
yeah, you said you met your wife in England, so
yeah, and she's brilliant. Like I am completely useless at languages. Absolutely, I have zero capacity for them whatsoever. I'm terrible, and she speaks 5 languages fluently.
What does she do?
She's a lawyer, in-house lawyer. She works from a cabin, and she lawyers. Yeah.
So what do you ever think you could learn and use a lawyer as a character in that? Or
I'd have to be careful. My wife is my first reader. She reads the book first, and that's always a very scary time because I'm kind of peering over to see if she's laughing or if she's scared or whatever. And then it goes to my agent to read it, and then it goes to my editor. There might be a lawyer. There have been a few minor characters that are lawyers, but I don't know, man. I don't find lawyers that fascinating or creepy as characters. Maybe one will work at some point, but not so far. I went to law school for years, so I'm done with the law.
I must admit, I am too. It didn't last very long with me. Yeah.
You studied law as well?
I did, yeah.
Brilliant. How long were you doing it for? How long were you studying it for?
6 years with the Open University, so it's from home.
That's long enough, isn't it? Long enough.
It is. It's long enough for anybody. Yeah. Unless I think that's probably all the questions I can come up with. Yeah. That's just everything. Yeah, another look.
No, that's all we at the moment.
Yeah.
Bernie's face is gigantic. Do you need headbands? Yes, that's
I think Craig Sisterson asked earlier why I chose the St. Bernard, so maybe I should answer that.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So it's a good question. I've always wanted a big dog in the woods. I've always liked big dogs. I had a Rottweiler as a kid, a big kind of soft Rottweiler, and I wanted a big dog. I like a dog with a big head. You know, you can stroke the head, and it's like I don't know. There's something very tactile about a big head, and I just figured a St. Bernard's a great dog. It's a kind of a protector dog, but it's not a guard dog. It's not aggressive on the whole, and it turns out he's fantastic. You know, he'll bark if there's a moose around or if there's a deer, but he's brilliant with my 6-year-old.
Well, he's definitely going to be your mascot for quite a few years yet, I'd imagine.
Absolutely. Hopefully, you'll get to meet him if I bring him to Harrogate one year.
More than likely, you know what I'm like Harrogate. I love the Harrogate. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Thanks for doing this. It's been great.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. It's good to see you.
And you, mate. And I'll hopefully see you in Harrogate next year.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
No problem at all. I've loved it. Yeah.
Take care.